Alright, so lately there's been a lot of talk about Japanese RPGs and how they are on the market and what's going on with them. Xbox fans saying, hey, we need more Japanese RPGs. PlayStation fans saying, hey, we got everything, but are we actually buying them enough? And Nintendo fans saying, wait a minute, why are certain games skipping out on Nintendo Switch when RPGs sell extremely well on the platform, usually at full price? So in this video, what we're going to be doing is breaking down all of the Japanese RPGs that have sold over 1 million units on the Nintendo Switch, its impact that it has, and going forward, what's going to come of this, because I was doing some research and it's pretty notable to see various different games do extremely well on the platform, and of course, what this actually means going forward. But before we get into anything, what's good everyone, OJ here. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell for new videos daily on the channel talking about Nintendo, RPGs, and more. So let's go ahead and jump right into this here. On Twitter, I actually put this out there, and some of you guys actually helped me put together quite a number of other games that have also, I guess you could call an RPG, that have sold over 1 million. So let's go ahead and get into some of those questionable things first, and then we'll get into some of the other ones, and then some other questionable ones as well. So some people were talking about Miitopia, which, yes, I guess you can classify that as a JRPG. So yes, Miitopia has sold over 1 million units on the Nintendo Switch. And why is this notable? Well, because it's a 3DS game that sold over 1 million units on the Nintendo Switch that Nintendo put out for like 50 bucks, right? And a lot of people went out there and bought it. Over 1 million people bought the game, so that's good, right? So Miitopia. And then here's another one that's kind of tricky, right? It is Ring Fit Adventure. So Ring Fit Adventure definitely has an RPG system built into it. You definitely level up and experience points and get new moves, but of course it's kind of like a fitness game as well. So if you want to count that, it's actually sold over 10 million units on the Switch, which it kind of broke anybody's expectations. Nobody thought Nintendo could make another fitness game and it do that well after Wii Fit and Wii Fit U. So the fact that this game did as well as it did is very interesting. So I think Ring Fit definitely has a future as fitness RPG. It's a very unique type of game, right? So if you're gonna count that, let's go ahead and count it there. Now let's go over some other games as well that are on this list. So Fire Emblem Three Houses. This is a strategy RPG, or some people say tactics RPG, whatever you want to call it. I call it a strategy RPG or SRPG. That is sold over 1 million units on the Nintendo Switch. It did so pretty quickly after it launched, and as of what we know right now, it's over 3 million units on the Nintendo Switch, and it's been frequently discounted to about $40 here and there at times, so I think that's definitely helped out with the sales. Nintendo's also ran their own sales on the game. There's been Black Friday deals where you can get it even a bit cheaper than that. So Fire Emblem is doing extremely well for a strategy RPG. There aren't many other strategy RPGs that can sell as well as Fire Emblem has. Now, next up is Dragon Quest XI S on the Nintendo Switch. Now, with this list, we're not talking about games that have sold 1 million units total on all platforms and also happen to share that with Nintendo Switch. We're talking about games that have sold at least 1 million units on the Nintendo Switch by itself, and Dragon Quest XI S is one of those games. I think that it's one of the finest RPGs ever made, and we know that the game has sold over 1 million on Switch if you count up the Famitsu sales in Japan alone. Dragon Quest XI S, the Definitive Edition, has sold 1 million units, or right around there. So obviously, if you include the US sales for the Nintendo Switch and all that, it's easily over 1 million. Now, Square Enix has not given us a breakdown between the different platforms. All we're going off of, or all what we know, is simply them saying, hey, it sold like 7 million plus or whatever total, and they're counting up all the versions of the game. But by going off of the Famitsu, we can kind of see where each of the games kind of left off, and then go from there when it comes to international sales. So we do know for a fact that Dragon Quest XI S Definitive Edition has sold over 1 million units on the Nintendo Switch by itself. Now let's go ahead and move over to some other games as well, and this is another controversial game that I want to get into. People say that maybe it's not an RPG, and I definitely think that it's a JRPG, and that is Astral Chain on the Nintendo Switch. I see it as an action RPG. Now, they classify it, I think on Nintendo's site, as just an action game, and that's fine. You can classify it as just that because it's not really billed. It's not really advertised as a JRPG or an RPG like a Xenoblade or Shin Megami Tensei. But if you get down to the nuts and bolts of the game and how the game operates and how it works, it is definitely an action RPG. It's really no different from other action RPGs out there. You have your offensive and defensive stats, you have your speed stats, you have everything with all the different legions. You have different experience points that you need, and you can level up. You have different armor and equipment that gets dropped on a rare loot type of based system as well, like an RPG. There are so many different things that factor into this game that make it just like an action RPG like Nier Automata or other action RPGs out there. It's just not pushed in the type of way, and you have like the damage numbers popping out. You have so many different things that equate it to being an action RPG. So I classify it as just that because of the experience, because of the armor, because of the stats, because of the equipment that you can put on each of your individual legions, which are like your party members that all have various different stats, but speed and strength and defense. Also, your own character also has that as well. So I see it as an action RPG for all of the reasons that I listed there, but even if you don't, that's fine by me. I classify it as that though. So it's an action RPG, and that has sold over 1 million units on the Nintendo Switch. Nintendo did announce that a number of years ago. I think it was back in December or it was late 2019 that the game did sell over 1 million units on the Nintendo Switch, and it's a phenomenal game that all of you guys should go out there and buy. And remember, it was on one of my 10 games that you should buy before they're super rare. Astral Chain is becoming just that. So go out there and pick up a physical copy of Astral Chain. Now, next up is one of the newer games to hit the million sellers club on the Nintendo Switch as a JRPG, and that is Shin Megami Tensei 5 on the Nintendo Switch. We just recently got the news from Atlas on Twitter that the game has sold over 1 million units, breaking all of the previous Shin Megami Tensei records and becoming the best selling Shin Megami Tensei game of all time in only about 5 months, because we still have the lifetime to date. There's still many more years of this game doing well. It is a bit discounted on Amazon. You can get it for 40 bucks, so I think that some of the discounts have helped it sell, but overall it's doing really well for a hardcore turn-based old school JRPG on the Nintendo Switch. Over 1 million. That's hard to see on other platforms, so the Switch is getting stuff like that done. So very good to see SMT5 do that well. Now, next up, we have a double pack of games from the team Asano / Square Enix, and that is Octopath Traveler and also Bravely Default 2. Both of these games have sold over 1 million units on the Nintendo Switch, which is really impressive considering the type of games that they are. These type of games struggle to sell over 1 million on other platforms for sure, but the Nintendo Switch has been able to get these games, by the way, at $60 full price, when it comes to full price for Nintendo Switch at least, and sell that amount. That's very hard to do. It's not easy to get that done. We just saw what Scarlet Nexus on the Xbox and PlayStation with various different systems and PC just hit 1 million in sales with all those platforms combined with heavy discounts. Octopath and Bravely Default have been able to do stuff like that in a very short amount of time with a much smaller install base. So once again, Nintendo Switch is really holding it down when it comes to JRPGs, especially unique ones built for the system like Octopath Traveler and also Bravely Default 2. Now, next up are the Monster Hunter games. We have Monster Hunter Rise, and we also have Monster Hunter Stories 2. Both of these games are million sellers plus, with Monster Hunter Rise selling 7 million, 8 million or so in that range, and Monster Hunter Stories 2 selling over 1 million units in about I think like a month or like a couple weeks. It wasn't that long. I think it was like a couple weeks, and it sold over 1 million. Now, Monster Hunter Stories 2 is a very different game from Monster Hunter Rise. I think we all know about Monster Hunter Rise and what that kind of is and how popular that is, but the fact that you can have a spin-off from the Monster Hunter series as a turn-based monster collecting Pokemon style of game, and it do that well when the previous game on the Nintendo 3DS didn't even hit anywhere near 1 million is very good, and once again shows that JRPGs have a very good life on the Nintendo Switch if you create a unique RPG built for the system like a Monster Hunter game. So very good to see that. Very good to see Monster Hunter Rise, which also is classified as an action RPG even by Capcom themselves. Both great games. Monster Hunter Stories as a turn-based JRPG, also Monster Hunter Rise as the action RPG. Both of those games have sold millions of copies, and together they've probably been about 10 million units or so on the Nintendo Switch by itself. So once again, very impressive there too. Now next up are the Xenoblade games, and that's pretty much all the Xenoblade games here that are on the system. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, also Xenoblade Chronicles 2, both of those games have sold over 1 million units on the Nintendo Switch, which is once again very impressive. We don't have sales numbers or download numbers for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Torn of the Golden Country, but I would bet that would probably be near 1 million. Once again, I don't have solid numbers on that, but since Nintendo hasn't given us that, but if you combine the DLC sales along with also the physical sales of it, I think that it could be nearing that. But from what we do know, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition and also Xenoblade Chronicles 2 are both over 1 million units sold. Last we heard about Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, it was over 1.5 million units sold. Last we heard with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, it was over 2 million units sold. So once again, two action RPGs with really weird and different but cool type of unique battle systems. Both of those over 1 million units for 3 million units total on the Nintendo Switch. So very good there. Now, next up are the Pokemon games, and that's all of the main Pokemon games that have been released on the Nintendo Switch, dating all the way back to 2018 with Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. That's over 10-11 million units sold at this point. One of the best selling games on the Nintendo Switch. Pokemon Sword and Shield, which came out the following year, that has sold over 20 million units. That one's up there, getting into the mid 20 million unit range, so very good on that front too. Also, the next one up is Pokemon Legends Arceus. That game has also sold over 1 million. And I think the last we heard about that was like 7-8 million or something like that. So Pokemon Legends Arceus has done very well. And if you count some of the smaller stuff, like the mobile games and all that, those are obviously like free to play. That stuff has all done over 1 million downloads. But yes, Pokemon has been incredible when it comes to the sales numbers and everything with the Pokemon games. It's just been really good. And now we have the new Pokemon game coming out, Scarlet and Violet, this year. That's going to do crazy numbers. That could be a 30 million seller on the Nintendo Switch if the game reviews a lot better than Pokemon Sword and Shield. So for right now, there's probably some more that I'm missing when it comes to RPGs that have done very well on the Nintendo Switch. There's probably more, but for right now, those are the ones that I do know. Now, if I miss something when it comes to just Switch by itself, not total overall sales, guys, with all the platforms, but actually you can say Switch by itself as a JRPG has sold over 1 million, let me know in the comment section below. But I also wanted to add in here why this is important as someone who covers a lot of JRPGs, and I want to see JRPGs do well. The fact that developers can go to the Nintendo Switch, and if they create a good game like we've seen before with Octopath, Shin Megami Tensei, Astral Chain, the Monster Hunter games, Xenoblade, Pokemon, Dragon Quest, I mean, you name it, it's been there. Heck, even if the game isn't quite as good like Miitopia or something like that, you can get phenomenal sales. So I would definitely like to see more developers create unique RPGs for the Nintendo Switch. I think Bandai Namco and some other developers have been lacking just a little bit when it comes to actually creating a unique RPG for the Switch system itself. And if you're looking at these sales, this obviously proves there is a market there, more so on the Nintendo Switch than any other platform, because I was going through what the PlayStation and Xbox have done, and I don't see as many JRPGs on those systems in terms of what we've seen with the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series. I have not seen as many JRPGs hit 1 million units of sales individually on the platform. And if you combine everything together, absolutely, but it's very rare to see that. It's only like the biggest games like the Final Fantasies or like the Monster Hunters or like something like Persona 5, for example, stuff like that. But anything that's smaller in scope and scale definitely needs Switch or Xbox or something else to kind of pull it together. So it's interesting to see that. And obviously with the RPGs, guys, play them anywhere that you want. I don't really care when it comes down to it. Play wherever you feel comfortable. But what I'm showing here is the information that actually shows that the Nintendo Switch definitely is that system for JRPGs, and developers obviously need to make some more games for it. I think they need to make some more unique RPGs built for the system like we just got with SMT, and of course Astral Chain and Octopath Traveler, Xenoblade, stuff like that. I think more needs to come, but overall, not a bad list so far. Double digit, 10+ million selling JRPGs on the system in only 5 years or so. Very impressive so far. So what are your thoughts on this when it comes to million selling plus JRPGs on the Nintendo Switch? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe if you're someone new. Click that notification bell. We will see you for the next video. Peace.